Chair recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Republican attack on this committee on telework policy and hybrid work continues from last Congress. I think this is the 5th or 6th or 7th hearing we've had on something like this. And this Abolish telework policy would cost American taxpayers billions of dollars each year and slow down operations. And I can't help but notice that in the same Congress that this committee is establishing a subcommittee to deliver on government efficiency, the majority seems unable to spot efficient policies that are right in front of them. While telework and remote work existed long before the COVID pandemic, we can now look at the data and better understand whether or not this is a policy that drives government efficiency. Ms. Cross, how possible is it that the reason behind Republicans' push to end telework at federal agencies is connected to maybe something a little bigger? And what I mean by this is when we look at documents like Project 2025 and we hear from a lot of those authors who are now going to be running the federal government, we often hear this notion of making things so unbearable for federal workers that they quit on their own. Is it possible that this whole effort is to end telework is part of a greater effort to push a massive amount of federal employees to quit?
Thank you for your question. Yes, it is possible. In fact, in private industry, companies that force strict return to office mandates, it's widely recognized that those are often regarded as soft layoffs. So it's easier for you to be able to say, we're going to make it as untenable as possible. So as you mentioned, our workers leave. The challenge with that is often your best high performers are the ones that walk out the door because they're the ones that can more easily do it. So there are significant implications to performance and productivity when you do.
And what kind of damage does this do to government operations, like responding to wildfires, sending out Social Security checks, renewing passports, or any other examples?
Yeah, well, initially, telework, mobile work, we used to call it flexi-place, it's gone through a lot of iterations, was a component of continuity of government, continuity of operations, and emergency preparedness. In fact, every year, OPM collects data from federal agencies to ensure that there are goals set, metrics set, and that they're tracking it against the ability to perform operations in unplanned events, weather storms, emergencies, potential things that we can't predict like global pandemics. So for one, it will disrupt operations. For two, it'll cost a lot of money. By the way, industry data says that office level occupancy rates were hovering between 50 and 60% well before the pandemic because of the mobile nature of our jobs anyway.
We've looked into this a little ourselves, and the evidence is pretty obvious. For example, DHS massively reduced the amount of real estate it had to rent between 2018 and 2023. This saved taxpayers $1.4 billion. DHS even said that, quote, the goal of fewer buildings and better buildings is good for the workforce, good for DHS and the mission, and good for the taxpayer, end quote. GSA, they said that it reduced its rent bill by $50 million in FY22, all while increasing productivity. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau said that they spent over $35,000 per month on helping employees to get to and from work, and now it's down to about $700 a month. Ms. Cross, instead of abolishing it, can we actually build on hybrid policy and telework policy, remote work, to maximize government efficiency, achieve cost savings, productivity, and employee well-being, while at the same time, yes, looking at bad actors as well?
Yes, 100%. We're seeing cost savings each and every year as it relates to reductions in transit subsidies when you're paying people that otherwise could work from an approved alternate work site, not at home, not on a beanbag, but an approved authorized work site, to be able to do so in a different location. Maybe that is a home office, maybe it's a federal satellite or co-working space, maybe it's a field office location as well. In addition to reducing office spaces, in fact, Global Workplace Analytics was here at a hearing a couple of years ago and estimated that if you increased telework just by 25%, you could reduce $1.7 billion in office space costs each and every year.
I appreciate you bringing this up. Eliminating massive savings and slowing productivity on its own would be bad. But the policies that our chairman and the Republican Party wants separately would add a bunch of new costs to American taxpayers. And I think that's really something we have to keep in mind. The notion that hybrid work means that you're not working is ridiculous. I mean, members on this committee, members of Congress, adopt a hybrid work model ourselves. I encourage members, maybe try a month of no hybrid work, no interviews in your car, no interviews at home. Go into your office for every single thing you do. And I think they'll find that part of what helps us be efficient in our own job is the fact that we have the choice of where we're going to do that work. There's no real reason to label the entire federal workforce as lazy. This is something we should look at. But a few bad actors, we shouldn't be able to label the entire workforce because of that. So thank you. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr.